Alright, what is up guys? If you're clicking on this video, you're wondering how to play 7, and I got a full guide for 7, the newest champion to the realm. Depending on when you're seeing this, depending if you're seeing it like later on or right now, we could probably have like 10 champions released already and after 7, but at least for right now, for the first patch of Season 5 for Paladins, 7 guide, I'm going to get right into it. We're going to be going through a bunch of stuff, items, his entire kit for those people that are actually looking to buy a new champion that are maybe newer players and just looking for an overall summary of his kit before you do waste your gold and buy him, stuff like that. So if you guys like these types of videos, leave a like, subscribe, share the video, it would really help me out. Let's get right into this. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to be going through loadouts as well, the maps he's good on, just some general tips and tricks I've learned from playing him all the way up to about level 21 now, over pretty much a lot over the last, I don't know, like week and a half the patch has been out. So let's start off with his talents. 7 is a flank champion with 1900 health. He is the newest champion in the game, like I said, at least for right now. Depending when you're seeing this, that could be different. But here's all his talents: Tribunal upgrades, overcharge, and spring loaded. If I want to tell you guys a talent right now that's actually the best, it is spring loaded. That is the best talent right now. And I'd probably say his worst talent is probably overcharge, if I'm being honest. And then Tribunal upgrades is okay, but it just kind of doesn't make sense for a lot of play styles that you're going to be wanting to do with 7, which I'll talk about. But overall, his best talent by far is spring loaded. Explosive dodge, drop an explosion where you land and take off from, decrease the cooldown by 35% of your dodge roll, and increase the range by 25%. It's crazy good. Crazy good, and if depending on when you're seeing this as well, it might end up getting nerfed. Probably a patch or 2 from now. Overcharge, your ultimate decrease 77 is now overcharged. Ultimate will no longer fear enemies, but it will deal 1100 damage in a small radius after a 1 second charge up time. And the charge rate is increased by 50%, so your ult charge 50% faster. And then you got Tribunal upgrades, which pretty much allows all your different mode stances for your weapon to do different types of stuff. Mag dump does fire. You got electric charge burst for your burst mode, and then you got ice for your automatic fire for your automatic stance. So let's get into this. I'm just gonna pick a random loadout. I'm gonna go through his entire kit. This is mainly for the people that are newer to the game. I'm gonna go through his entire kit and kind of show you guys what he's made of and what he really does. For those of you guys that actually probably already have him, you guys already know what this does. If you want to skip this part of the video, this is mainly just for the newer players and stuff like that have gold and don't really have all the champions unlocked and are looking for new champions to unlock, and are wondering or not whether 7 is actually good. So, and actually would fit their playstyle. Pretty much what your base weapon is, it's kind of a jack of all trades. It's a burst rifle, an automatic rifle, and like pretty much like an out close range like SMG, pretty much with the mag dump. You got 3 different swaps, as you guys can see. I'm swapping the stances. You got a burst fire, which is a really slow burst fire. It's good up to around about medium range, like right here is medium range, and it's good up to around about here. Like I have Tribunal upgrades, so it's doing a little bit like electricity damage, if you guys can see that as well, because I have a talent that allows that. But normally it's good about to a medium range. You take about, what, 3 clips. Just think of it as like Victor's burst mode, but just kind of slower and not really good at long range. It's just mainly for around medium ranges. Then you have the second stance, which is called Mag Dump. This is one you need to be like within melee range. Like if you can see, like I go right here, like you're not landing your entire clip, and it does have a really lot of recoil. It really does like kick upwards. There is a lot of recoil with this, which can be kind of solved with loadout cards, and it can be made a lot easier to control, but it does take a lot of control. So if you guys want to test this out in the shooting range before you do play him, I highly would recommend it, because when you get into a match and you're trying to fight somebody, you can't land an entire mag on somebody because you do not know the recoil pattern. It's going to make you lose a lot and make you get killed a lot. So like I said, there is our loadout cards that can actually help with this. I'll talk about it in a bit, but the reason why he's on fire as well is because of Tribunal upgrades. That's their talent. He does have like a burning effect, but you have to be pretty much in melee range. Like you can one-tap somebody if you get enough headshots. You can't really one-tap a tank. I think it takes around about 3 clips. It depends if you get like a headshots as well. It depends what tank you're going against, but usually it's about 3 clips, and you can't really do that to a tank anyways. This is mainly for your really squishy characters. You can go up like this, or like jump them as a flank, and then go up to them really close and pretty much delete most of their health, and then quickly swap and maybe go to like an automatic stance or something else to finish them off. Next thing we got is movement. One of his movement abilities, which is a dodge roll. As you guys can see, I throw it on bombs. With spring loaded, you actually throw it on bombs here, and then wherever you land, you'll have actually increased range on that as well. And it actually has I think, a reduced cooldown. And you have his other movement ability, which is actually pretty much a grappling hook, which I think is something that Sky should have had. I think this is something that Sky should have had as like a movement ability in her kit when she got reworked back in the day. But it's good to see it in the game now. Pretty much you can latch on stuff and you can actually sit on a wall in stealth. If you just press the jump button, you jump down. If you get shot on the wall and somebody sees you, you take any types of damage or crowd control, or you take like any chip damage at all. It will break your stealth and you will fall down if the duration is done. So you can also use this to actually latch to tanks. If you latch to a tank, it'll pull you towards a tank. And if you latch to like a squishy character like a support or a DPS or another flank, it'll actually pull them towards you, which is kind of cool. So it's some really cool tech, which I think is really, really cool for him. So, and then you got his ultimate, which is the Kree 77. I think this ultimate's not really that good. If I'm being honest, I think this ultimate should not have been on a flank character, and I think this ultimate should have been saved for a future character in the game that was either a tank or a support. It just doesn't really make sense on a flank. You can target up to 5 people with your ult. What it does 250 damage, and it has a slight charge up, I think, of about 3 seconds, and then you get a fear. So it has a fear, and then I think it's a 3-second fear. So actually, we can actually look right now. It's pretty much, yeah, it's a fear damage. So you get 250 damage, which you can target up to 5 people. As long as you're on them, you have to stay on them for about 3 seconds for it to actually lock on. See, like now they have the target. That means they're going to be feared. So there's actually a bug with this ultimate right now as well. Depending on when you're seeing this, it might not work for you sometimes because his ult is actually bugged. It is a known bug that sometimes your ult will not work, or it'll say they get stunned, but they do not get feared, or not stunned, like feared out. So even though it was supposed to work like the icon, but they just won't get feared out, which is a bug right now, which should get fixed hopefully with the next couple patches, hopefully, because it's a game-breaking bug for him and it makes him garbage, even worse. Not that his ult's really good to play with anyways. Keep in mind it also gets blocked by deployables and blocked by shields. And you, like I said, there is a charge up time on this. You have to look at somebody for 3 seconds to actually be able to get them feared. So, and then with your other talent, with your other, what is it? Look what the talent name was. I just want to be sure what talent name it was. Overcharged. Like with Overcharged, let's try that out. Let's see what Overcharge does. Like, this is what Overcharge does. It augments your ult. So you look at somebody, and then it does an AoE burst damage of 1100. Instead of fearing them out and then giving like an icon and then being able to click the button to fear them out, it just does it automatically when you look at somebody with your ult. So, and it charges 50% faster. Overall, not really good talent. Probably his worst talent, if I'm being honest. That's his entire kit. Really cool. You can really good mobility. Like, you can actually control in the air too. Like, with your grappling hook, you can control in the air. It's kind of like a Buck leap or like an Octavia leap if you've played them characters. You can kind of go in the air and like kind of move around in the air and control where you're going to land or where you're going to latch onto, which is really, really cool. So like I can go up here and it can land right here, and then I can go right over here. I can kind of just control and I would go over here. So really cool. And you got your dodge roll, which is good as well. Keep in mind as well, if does not work like Cassie's dodge roll. If you are CC'd with a lot of stuff with Cassie's dodge roll, for example, if you're like grabbed midair by a Genos or something like that, or like Lex, it does not work like Lex's slide or Cassie's dodge roll. If you are grabbed by a Genos or like most simple CC things in the game, such as being like lifted in the air by a Genos, for example, just without his cripple talent, you will not be able to dodge roll out of it. So keep that in mind. You can hook yourself out of it, but you won't be able to dodge roll out of it, which hopefully is something really good to know. Let's get into his items. I'm going to go through his items real quick. Let's get right into these. Guardian, you can't buy because you don't have a shield. But as for items, I think a lot of items work for him. I think the best item for him is Deft Hands. It really is. Deft Hands is great. Nimble's great. I think Chronos and Deft Hands are his two best items. I really do. And then as like a third or fourth item, I would probably go like a Veteran and then probably like a Haven. I think that would be really good. Those are like the best items. There are other options, like if you want to go morale boost just for his ult, and if you're getting a lot of kills off your ult, and you happen to be really good at landing your ult and getting value out of it, morale boost is good. Nimble's great. Life Rip, I wouldn't really build on him. He doesn't really have the biggest of damage numbers, and you don't really get much value out of Life Rip. Kill to Heal can be okay as a filler item. Rejuvenate if you have like a support that's pocketing you a lot of the game, like a Genos or a Corvus or something like that, or like a Ceres. Would not really build Wrecker on him. He's not really a flank that does incredible amounts of damage, and you don't break shields very well. You're going to be kind of want to use your mobility to play around the shields, not really just go right at them and try to break the shields like a DPS or even some of the other flanks in the game that can break shields a lot better kind of would. So it's kind of overall items. Like I said, Haven, Chronos, Veteran, Deft Hands are like the four main ones, and you can kind of slide some other ones. Bulldozer if they have a lot of deployables. I wouldn't even really worry about it though, because you can kind of just play around deployables. There's aren't really like many ones in the game that you would really need to run like a Bulldozer for, apart from maybe like Amani's Dragon. I wouldn't really pick it up for anything else. Like I said, Resilience as well if they have a lot of CC. Illuminate if they have another stealth character on the enemy team like a Shaolin or a Sky. Kind of no-brainer. Kind of just whatever you want to build. If whatever you feel like building as your first item and your first couple items, it's all up to you. But the reason why I think Deft Hands is probably the best item for him is just because of Mag Dump. Mag Dump is probably his best ability out of all of the stances, and it allows you to have probably the best reload. Like I think I have it with, now like I have Deft Hands 5, or Deft Hands 3 right now. Like this is full Mag Dump with Deft Hands 3. You reload really quick, so it's really good if you're wanting to actually just spam Deft Hands. And I can't sell the items back for some reason, but I was going to test it again without Deft Hands. But we tested it earlier. You guys saw how slow the reload was. He also does have reload cards in his loadouts, which we'll talk about in a bit. But overall, 7 looking pretty good. Not really much else to really say. Let's get into some loadouts, and then I'm going to go through some maps and give you guys some more general tips on how to play them. As for loadouts, disregard the top 2 ones. Those are default loadouts. All 3 of the default loadouts they give you are really bad. Do not use them. Never use the default loadouts they give you because they are really awful. You're better off just making your own loadout before using a default one. I actually have 4 loadouts for 7, which I think all work really well. The first one I'm going to be talking about is kind of just your all-around, like your all-arounder type loadout, which is called 3 mod. This is mainly just kind of cards, just because if it's more of like a loadout that you're going to be using if you want to make use out of all your stances, mainly with like Tribune upgrades for that talent. It's kind of if you want to use all your stances. I have Fragments at a 3 or a 5 because I think that's a really good card. And then I just have a lot of filler cards at 2 or 3 that are kind of just based around the stances. Burst mode, getting a 3 seconds cooldown if you get a kill in burst mode. Reduce the cooldown of Hook, but with using Explosive Dodge. Red Doom, kind of a filler card. Then Rapid Response, kind of a filler card. You can kind of switch some of these cards out as well. There's a lot of other cards in his loadouts you can kind of switch out. But overall, just kind of a loadout to make use of all of his stances. You're not really favoring a stance above the other. Kind of just trying to get as many kills as you can with just kind of combining his stances in and kind of comboing them. So kind of what this one is. Very simple and very straightforward. The next one I got is Mobility, which is probably his second best one, I think. This is probably the second best loadout I think I've made for him, and it works really well. Latch and Fire, and you got the Knight, which pretty much reduced the cooldown of Explosive Dodge by 5 seconds after using a grappling hook. Pretty much what this does, if you actually have, his mobility talent, which is, Spring Loaded. I forgot the name for a second, but if you have his talent Spring Loaded, what this card really does, I think it brings your explosive dodge, I think, down to like a 2-second cooldown or something. It's crazy. It's crazy, and you're constantly getting a reset with it as well because there's no internal cooldown. You can kind of snowball your abilities, which is crazy, especially with Chronos 3. It's great. Reduce the cooldown of grappling hook by 3 seconds after using explosive dodge, and then reduce the cooldown of explosive dodge after using grappling hook. So kind of just two abilities you're going to be cycling the majority of the game, and those are the two things that you're going to be using the majority of the game: your grappling hook and your dodge roll. Using those for mobility to get into the enemy backline, get some picks, get out of there. Kind of just cycling those two abilities, and then building Chronos alongside that from the item store to get those even on lower cooldown, and kind of just spamming those. With that, it's really hard to lock you down. If you're going against people that do not know how to play the game, and they're really bad, you're just going to shit all over them because they will not be able to lock you down at all. You can kind of just run the game. Kind of some filler cards. I got My City with his 20% DR on a wall. Terror at 2, 10% grappling hook strength. And then I got Fragments, which is 10% health over time, kind of just filler cards. You can kind of replace whatever you want here, whatever works for you. But mainly these just two cards right here, Latch and Fire and the Knight. The next one called Take a Dump, which is mainly around the Mag Dump talent, or the Mag Dump ability in your kit from your stance swaps. Like I said earlier when we were talking about his kit, he actually does have a card that reduces the recoil of Mag Dump, so it has a lot less kickback, and it's a lot easier to land the shots and land all your damage onto somebody at close range in like melee range. Got that at a 5, and then you got reload speed at a 5. This makes it to the point where out of spawn, you do not have to stack Deft Hands if you don't want to as a first item. That way, if you want to go into something else out of spawn, and you can kind of bypass Deft Hands with loadout cards with a tier 1 of that. So it's kind of this there. I don't know. Some people will argue if you're better off just running Deft Hands from the item store over just wasting a 5 in a loadout slot. It's up to you. It's worked pretty good for me, so that's why I'm including it in this video. And just a bunch of filler cards. Like I said, just swap these out with whatever you feel is good for your loadout and your playstyle. Mainly just these two cards though are for this loadout. And then here's his best loadout that I think is the best one for him right now. I've been finding the most success with. Terror at a 5, and then Rapid Response. This is the second Mag Dump talent one with your Mag Dump stance from your weapon swap. Same card, Rapid Response at a 5, but this time you actually got Terror. You can actually use this with Tribunal upgrades or with Spring Loaded. I actually think Spring Loaded with this loadout is insanely good. Pretty much what you do with this is you pull people like squishy characters, you pull them towards you, you dodge roll backwards, they take damage, and you run forward really fast and you mag dump them. With the amount of damage that you're going to be giving to people, I think it's around 600 damage. I think if they land on your explosives, you get them 600 damage, and then you go right back at them again. You run right back at them again with a mag dump. With the 600 damage on a squishy character, as long as they don't get a heal, that is a guaranteed KO on most things. So it's kind of how you play this. Like I said, I think Rapid Response is probably one of his best cards. You're just gonna be using this loadout mainly as to pull shit towards you and just make shit take as much damage as possible. Like make people take as much damage as possible. The only way this kind of struggles is kind of versus tanks. You're gonna get shit on by a lot of tanks because tanks just have a lot more health, and you have a 1900 health bar, which is really squishy for a champion. You throw a pins and needle at you, and you pretty much fall over. So you can't really take much damage, and that's why you have a lot of mobility. So you kind of have to get out of there and kind of have to play safe around the tanks. But you can 1v1 a tank in certain situations. It depends on their health bar, how much health they have, and if they have a support backing them up or a team backing them up. But that's something what you guys can actually do. It is just take a fight that you know you're going to win or not. That's up to you guys, and that's how you guys use the loadout and how you play them. But probably the best loadout. I think this is probably the best loadout. If you want a really solid loadout, this works with Tribunal upgrades, and this works with Spring Loaded. I would definitely say Spring Loaded is the best talent for him right now, especially with this loadout. So, with that being said, let's get into some maps and some more overall tips for 7. Really cool champion. I just don't, at least for a lot of people, he is cool and he is fun to play. I do think he is fun to play. But at least for me personally, I think overall with the release of 7 into the game, I would have just rather had a support or a tank champion as a lot of other people. I feel like 7's kind of just a filler champion, if I'm being honest. He's fun to play. He's really cool. He's just not really what the game needed right now, unfortunately. Let me know what you guys think of 7 in the comments down below if you've already played him, and if you have not, hopefully this inspires you to play him, or at least pick him up and buy him with gold or whatever you're planning to do. Let's get into the next part of the video. Alright, as for maps that 7 is actually good on, I wouldn't say there's actually like a specific rotation of maps that he's actually insanely good on. You can play him on every single map in the game and make him work if you are good with him, but I would just recommend that he is a lot better on the maps that are a lot smaller and have a lot more cover and ways to like get away and stuff like that. The maps I would not play him on over a lot of the other flanks just because of his playstyle and what you kind of need to do with him, which is mainly be up close and personal in somebody's face and not really be poking from medium and long range, because there's just better flanks in the game to do that, and you're just wasting a pick, or shouldn't even really be picking 7 if that was what you wanted to do. Just wouldn't really recommend playing him on stuff like Ice Mines, Fish Market, Frog Isle, like the maps that have really long lines of sight. Those are the maps I wouldn't really recommend him being played on, just because I think there's a lot better picks for flanks on those maps than 7 which you need to be like in somebody's face to do the majority of your damage. And on those maps, you're just going to be getting destroyed a lot of the time just because everybody's going to be doing a lot more damage than you, and you won't be able to out-damage them, especially at medium to long range. And it's going to be really difficult to close the distance and just get into somebody's face when you're taking so much damage to begin with. So apart from that, like the majority of other maps in the game, he does work really well on. Bright Marsh, Stone Keep, Warder's Gate, Bazaar, like all those maps, stuff like that, it works really good. Shattered Desert ain't bad either. Like there's a lot of maps in the game that he does work on. So I just wouldn't use them on the maps I said, like the ones with the long ranges and long sight lines, just because it's really difficult to play him, and you're just better off just playing a lot of the other flanks if on those types of maps. He's just not really meant for those, and you're kind of just wasting your time. Unless you're incredibly cracked at 7 and you can just play the shit out of him, then by all means pick him up on every map, but I just wouldn't play him on those ones. As for like good teammates pairings and like matchups you're good and bad into, you are good into some matchups that have like the enemy team not having much mobility. You shit on a lot of other like DPS, especially the supports. I think the only supports in the game that can legit check you are maybe Furia and then Genos, because he can lift you up and then Furia can stun you out with a beam. Apart from that, there are a lot of supports in the game that do have mobility. They can kind of get away from you, but they don't have really like a check to actually like 100% like win a 1v1 versus you. So I think the best matchup with 7 and the thing that he does best is actually go after supports and go after the backline and kill supports. That is the one thing he does the best, because the majority of the supports in the game, they have to be either really good to take you down and actually win a 1v1 versus you, or they have to be like a specific support, which is like Furia and Genos are like the only ones that can probably win a 1v1 versus you, just because they can hold you in the air or just stun you out with a beam and then win that way, because Furia does a ton of damage for a support. But like those are the two supports that I'd say would check you. Apart from that, like other stuff in the game that does check you are the snipers, especially on their good maps. Like I said, I was talking about Fish Market and Frog Isle and like Ice Mines and the maps that have a lot of long lines of sight and stuff like that. And it's just really difficult to get close enough without being seen and actually just getting one-tapped. Strix and Kinessa, Strix can 1800 headshot you, and you have 100 health left if you don't run any HP cards, and it's not really worth running HP cards on 7. And then Kinessa can just straight up one-tap you with a headshot with steady aim. So it's just really difficult playing into those champions, especially on their good maps. If they're not really on their good maps, you can have a pretty good matchup into them if they happen to pick them on like some other maps. But even as a flank, it's really difficult to match into the snipers, and there's just a lot of better options for flanks to do that. The main thing you excel at is killing the supports and killing some of the DPS champions. You can get close to ones that don't really have that much mobility. Sati, Vivian, stuff like that. Victor can kind of run away from you, but if you can get right onto him, you can hook him with your grapple and you pull him back to you. He's usually dead. There are a lot of DPS in the game that you can actually 1v1 and do really good into, just because you have a lot of mobility and you have ways to actually just delete them really quickly at close range. The ones I would not play her into it is stuff like Amani, Leon, because Leon legit does like half your health bar, like legit with one ability. You're taking 800 damage from Eminence or from Presence, I think it is, with one ability, and that just puts you at a huge disadvantage. That it's really difficult to dive her with how much like burst damage she does. The DPS that do a lot of damage really fast, Amani, especially with the fireballs, with her Pyre Ball, you're getting pretty much two-shotted by those, especially at close range if you can land through those. And she can kind of just run away from you because she's has a lot of mobility. Leon, stuff like that. So just a few to name those. And then for like tanks, I wouldn't really say you have like a specific matchup into any of the tanks that is really good. Like the only reason you would actually go after a tank is if you know you can win 1v1 if they're actually at low health and you know they have no support, or you know they're too overextended or not going to get a heal or anything like that. That's the only way I would really try to 1v1 a tank. Apart from that, they win pretty much all the time because you have such a squishy health bar, and they just have a lot more in their arsenal to deal with you than you can for them. So, as for stuff I would actually pair with 7, at least for healers, you can kind of pair any DPS in the game with them and like any tank if you really want to. But as for supports, I think Genos, Corvus, and Furia are probably the best ones. Corvus and Genos work great with them. Like the constant pocket heals and even like a Dark Gifts, Corvus is insane with him right now. It's really good. Cherish Furia, constantly being able to get heals all the way across the map, doing your job. If you have a support that's constantly seeing you and constantly giving you heals, even at like long ranges, really good. Ceres ain't too bad if you, with Mortal Reach Ceres, if you can get heals from her, especially if you're across the map or trying to do your job in the enemy's backline, you get a clutch heal. Just kind of a few to name them. You can pair him with like pretty much any support and do really good as long as your support play is decent. But apart from that, those are some of the better ones. Like I said, any DPS and any tank, there isn't really any like specific ones you're going to pair with 7. He's kind of one of those champions you kind of just plop onto a team because you have an okay matchup versus the enemy team with him. And that's kind of how he works. But hopefully I gave you guys some tips and some stuff you guys can use from this video. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, share the video. It would really help you out and help out the channel, and hopefully I helped you guys out and hopefully enjoyed. I really like doing these guide type videos for every new champion, so hopefully you guys like them as well. Apart from that, I'm going to get out of here. Hopefully enjoyed. See you guys in a future video.